This is Arkansas running back Mike Washington Jr.
He is by far the best athlete in the draft class. It's almost like Adrian Peterson level if you're just looking at the NFL Combine. Now, I will say there's a difference in terms of the agility on tape, how much physicality Mike Washington does bring. But 4.3, 340, it's 98th percentile at 223 pounds, also in the 95th percentile. If he can get to the corner, he's going to win the race.
I see everyone say that, this running back class stinks after Jeremiah Love. My response will be, but have you really watched enough Mike Washington Jr.? Because I think there's a lot to like when you dig into the Arkansas film this past season. I mean, you can turn on the Memphis game. You see him perfectly set up his second level tight end block with a head nod to the outside, then finishes strong between defenders up the gut for a gain of 12 yards. Or versus this loaded Notre Dame defense that we keep talking about, he gets skinny on 3rd and 2 in a tight space off the backside of the center for a gain of 21. Or like this patience against the Tennessee Vols with one hand on the back of a pulling offensive lineman. He cuts off of that for a 40-yard gain that he then adds on 6 extra yards on final contact. So again, we can say he's all athlete. He's a bit boom bust. Hey, and again, when I kept digging in a little bit more, I saw some like real nuance and technique and feel for the position that I don't think other people are bringing up.
I saw the same thing. I was like, kept waiting for him to like bounce the ball too much or just like run into the back of his offensive lineman. I did think that his vision was actually pretty rock solid, and they used him in different ways. A lot of like shotgun, it was pretty helpful for him to play against or play right next to an elite, crazy level athlete at quarterback. So there was a little bit of like the J.K. Dobbins next to Lamar Jackson. Like obviously you're going to have more open lanes, but when he has the open lane, like the burst through the first and second level, it's outrageous stuff. And like sometimes he's doing a little jump cut to get started. But when you have a wide open lane, like to me, like in the NFL outside zone, and he just has some of these like perimeter stretch runs, like how they use Derrick Henry is kind of how I'd want Mike Washington to get utilized, because he's got that like upright style to him, but extremely fast. And it doesn't even take long for him to get up to full speed, as we saw in the 40-yard dash. So I thought he was a little bit more nuanced, like you're talking about, enough so where I think that he's, to me, definitely in consideration to be my RB2 in the class.
Talked about the explosive plays. Our buddy Rich Rebar pointed this out, that Mike Washington Jr. posted 9.6 yards per rushing attempt, so per carry, when he was contacted beyond the line of scrimmage, which was second in this class, only behind Jeremiah Love. But 21.4% of his runs failed to gain any yardage, the highest rate in this class.
But if you watch that offense, there's a lot of runs that are going like directly to the sideline, and they would play in some really funky formations where he just get hit instantly. It wasn't like somebody that's like waiting, can't see the hole, trying to bounce it outside, and then kept getting hit.
I thought he got north and south. Like I thought he was quite decisive behind the line of scrimmage. Now, and there were even some cases where there was instant disruption. He has to do a jump cut, kind of reset what his pathway is. There was another play versus Tennessee with this. And then he again has like the mindfulness to be out of the reach of 3 different Tennessee Volunteers that are trying to tackle him at each level of the defense. Like there's one at the line of scrimmage that's a defensive tackle. There's a linebacker at the second level. Then there's a safety, and that ends in like a crazy long run. So I think despite that high varianceness in his statistical profile, that you actually can kind of rely on his feet and his vision to choose the right path and attack.
Right. I just think that it's part of the playing style. If you want to get into the outside, you're going to have to live with some of the negative runs. And like we see that with like Keaton Mitchell, who is like nowhere near as big as Mike Washington, but that's how he's made a living in the NFL as not a starter, but somebody that you're going to want to get some touches because he has a chance to rip off like a 60, 70-yard touchdown. Now, one little weakness in his game is just not a whole lot of wiggle. And you see it in the force missed tackle numbers. So just like on a per carry basis, it's definitely a tier or two below Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love. But he's also running by guys and not forcing a missed tackle just because he's winning with speed. Versus, obviously, I said Adrian Peterson, like he has almost the exact NFL Combine profile. Adrian Peterson was able to sink down low and obviously cut at a level that Mike Washington has no business even attempting to do. So I do think there is kind of this upright style that's going to hurt Mike Washington in some of the force missed tackle numbers, but at the same time did dip his head in on that truck stick against the safety at Texas for a touchdown, which was a absolute bonkers play out of Mike Washington.
Yeah, number 16 probably wakes up with nightmares of
Did he
Mike
wake
Washington
up?
at the 3 or 4 yard line in that 22-yard touchdown run against Texas. Yeah, as much as I have optimism towards Mike Washington Jr., there are some obvious flaws to this profile. And yeah, number one is what you said, that he can look so freaking explosive and smooth in the first and second level, but then one-on-one with the safety, like in that Memphis game, he gets chopped down for a 16-yard gain instead of like a 21-yard touchdown. He does get chopped down in the open field. That again can eliminate 10, 20, 30, 40 extra yards on these runs.
Right.
And even when he's like meeting some defensive backs at the third level, instead of, like you're saying, trying to just completely avoid them, started his career at Buffalo, then New Mexico State, which by the way had a ton of these prospects, and Diego Pavia and Eli Stowers, and I'm sure a few others. He ran behind another draft prospect at New Mexico State. So his most productive season was basically here at Arkansas. But again, that is an older player, despite this fantastic athleticism. But we have seen, older running backs get drafted in round 2 and round 3 of the draft recently too.
Right. Only 167 carries was his most as well. So he's always been in a committee backfield. This last year, 6.4 yards per carry against SEC competition, I think is pretty good. I think the receiving game for him is a little bit up and down. 28 receptions in his final season is actually pretty good. Lots of just swing routes, wheel routes, basically any type of route where you can get his momentum so he can get up to top speed immediately. That's the routes he's doing. Not a whole lot like route running, like what we're talking about, angle routes and just like quick outs. Not going to get that, but I do think you can throw the ball consistently to him in the swing type of profile to get him going. And then in pass protection, there were some reps where like really clean. I think for the most part was able to diagnose things. A couple times a blitzer would meet him and he wasn't ready for it. Kind of leads with his forearm a little bit too much, but he's a big dude, really athletic, and he has some want to. So I don't think he was fantastic there. He was also not disqualifying. So I think his third down profile is like, for the most part, passable. It's not stand out in either way, which I think is fine because like we're probably drafting him to get him on these stretch runs so he can rip off a potential 40-yard touchdown.
Yeah, let's talk about that pass protection, because I believe someone posted that PFF gave him a grade of like 40 in his pass protection. And as much as I appreciate some of the underlying statistics and metrics that PFF puts out there, I kind of always disagree with their pass protection stuff, because if you have 1 or 2 or 3 bad blocks, then it kind of tanks your ranking, not for just that game, but for the entire season. And I felt like the first 6 games of the year, like against Ole Miss and Notre Dame and Tennessee, he was an excellent pass protector. Like he would diagnose who the free rusher is going to be with all these pressure looks that the opposition would send. Sometimes they would send 2 with a delay. He would allow the outside one to rush because that would take long to get the quarterback. And then he would attack the inside blitzer on top of it, which was excellent stuff. There were even ones where he was jolted on first contact, was able to kind of reestablish himself, get his balance and work back to it. But then I don't know what happened against Texas A&M. That Texas A&M, I thought pass protection game was horrific. He looked kind of slow and lethargic, and then it kind of went downhill from there. But that also might coincide with kind of the downhill nature of this Arkansas team, where they finished the year 2-10 and lost their final 8 games.
Yeah, I think that the PFF note is good, because there's a couple times the negatives on the PFF site where I thought the quarterback just bailing out 100%. Into a way that would just be like, okay, yeah,
it's like a zero blitz, and he's like, okay, instead of hang back here, I'm going to get out. And Mike Washington is protecting as if his quarterback is going to be in the pocket. Right. So obviously the rusher is going to then angle towards the quarterback and,
it's not his
get
fault.
his hands on it.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I watched every single one of Mike Washington's pass protection reps, like every single one. I thought he was fine. Like you said, there was a couple reps where I thought either the technique wasn't perfect or a blitzer came in, but there's other times where it was a more complicated blitz and he was sorting things out at the same exact time. So I think, like we said, I think he's a better runner than somebody that's going to be playing passing situations, but I do think that he caught the ball pretty cleanly, and there's some really nice moments, especially on wheel routes, to use his speed out there as well. So are you ready for some comps?
Yeah, I'll throw mine out first. You ready?
Go for it.
I keep going back to this. This is like the Christine Michael, Chris Carson-esque profile that John Schneider has historically loved. Now, sometimes that works, like Chris Carson, and I would even say like Chris Carson is a bit more emphatic and a finish with a punch on his one-on-one tackling.
Oh yeah.
But like the Rashad Pennies, the Kristen Michaels, mostly athlete, that then some other nuance to their rushing game.
Mhm.
That is the platform, the plane that I view Mike Washington Jr. on.
Yeah, Christine Michael is one of mine. I had Ryan Matthews as one as well.
Okay.
Latavius Murray kind of had this upright style, and he was a much better athlete at the combine than I remember him, because like he played for so long in the pros.
Had some moments too.
Yep. And I think Mike Washington absolutely can have some moments. And then just interesting, Bashal Tutin got a lot of love in the dynasty community. Obviously, Mike Washington is much bigger than Bashal Tutin. They almost had the exact same workout and kind of like pathway to becoming really relevant as a college player. And I get like no love out of the Mike Washington stuff. There was a ton of Bashal Tutin love out there. I think Tutin was probably breaking more tackles, where Mike Washington had a little bit more take it to the distance. But just, I'm looking at probably a mid third round pick to me. Like I think that's where I would draft Mike Washington. And I think after watching Jadarian Price, I view them pretty similarly, even though they're complete opposite type of players. But I don't think that the gap between those two is nearly as big as like the consensus rankings are making it out to be.
Yeah. Don't threaten John Schneider to move away from consensus, or he might take him in round 2. I think that's definitely a possibility. And again, this like high variance nature, it's very different than like the Ken Walker stuff, where he might do a little bit too much behind the line of scrimmage, but you're getting some super explosive plays. It's maybe the same statistical profile with that, but I think in kind of a different package.
Yeah. He does not have the side to side that Kenneth Walker has. To me, it's almost like the big version of, like Keaton Mitchell, like Derrick Henry. It's just the stretch runs where you're
him
asking
to the
for
edge
speed
and let him rumble.
Yeah. Almost like Omarion Hampton kind of had a lot of the same traits as well. I think Hampton had a little bit more wiggle than Mike Washington, but it's that type of profile, which I think for the most part works. So if the price tag's not too crazy, I think that you can find a starting level player in the third round with Mike Washington.
By the way, Latavius Murray, 65th most rushing TDs all time, ahead of like Tiki Barber, Chris Johnson, Nick Chubb, Matt Forte. The list goes on and on. So let's put some respect on Latavius Murray's name. All right. That's going to do it. At some point, we're going to have a whole entire running back rankings video. So hit subscribe on the channel. Go watch some wide receiver prospects, tight ends, quarterbacks, whatever you want. We have it, and we'll see you over there.